So our kids right now are almost 14, almost 12, and almost 10. And so we're about to be out of the single digit kid phase as we're filming this. Um, and so spiritual life and spiritual development in our family has looked a lot of different ways. Obviously, the things we do now aren't the same things we did when we had a 2-year-old, a 0-year-old, and then not a third kid. But one of the very first things we heard, and I can't remember who said this first, we've heard it a few times, is there's a lot of methods, there's a lot of books, so many books on parenting, not just spiritual parenting, just anything you want on parenting. There's way more books than you could possibly read, and some of them disagree with each other. But just being present and being consistent was one of the first and maybe best pieces of advice that we were given. And so we try to be really intentional, but we also try to feel freedom in how we engage our kids and the different things that we do. So I think we try to be consistent, but not always consistent with the exact same things. And we try to be present. We don't always carry that out well. But part of being present is showing our kids our spiritual lives as well, and the ways that we engage God. And so I just think of a few things that we've done throughout the years. We consistently pray at meals, and from younger than they knew how to pray, we would invite the kids to pray as well. We take turns praying very often in meals, and sometimes it's, going in order. Charlotte, Maggie, Travis, Charlotte, Maggie, Travis. We'll jump in, of course, as well, that kind of stuff, on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And sometimes it's, well, I don't feel like praying. It's like, well, sometimes we don't feel like praying either, so why don't you go ahead and pray? Or sometimes it's like, okay, like, you don't feel like praying, that's fine, let's jump to the next. And so, but making prayer a consistent piece. We've usually had some sort of, especially our kids have gotten older, younger elementary school into where they are now, some sort of either morning or bedtime devotional. Or right now we're reading through the Big Picture Bible. It's a kid's Bible, really beautifully illustrated kid's Bible too.
Or the biggest story, I think.
Biggest story, yeah. There's a lot of kids' Bibles out there. We're doing one. And so either a devotional before our kids go to school in the morning, or reading something at night. We pray at night with our kids, often one-on-one.
Kind of depends on what they want. Sometimes it's all together, sometimes it's one-on-one.
That's true. I think of historically more one-on-one though. Now they're on, like when they were younger, we did more one-on-one so we could talk a little bit more with the older kiddos, and just pray simple prayers with the younger ones. But then we also just try to, go on walks and talk about God, and I think one of my favorite things that we do when we're in a good space for it and when we're being present, is just noticing God and just bringing God into everyday conversations and this kind of stuff. We do some highs and lows. What was the best part of your day, worst part of your day, that kind of stuff. And then as some of that, sometimes we'll go into like, where did you see God show up today, or is there something you need? And just trying to teach our kids to engage God that way. And then maybe my favorite thing we do occasionally at times is as we pray at night, especially when we're together, we'll just kind of pause at the end of the prayer and say, all right, Lord, if you have something to show us, show us. If you have something to tell us, and let's be still and quiet before God. And very often, there's nothing, but sometimes he'll bring an image or a memory or a verse to mind or that kind of stuff, and so we'll just get to share that as a family.
Sometimes the kids just share random things, but it's just them sharing what came to mind, and that's okay.
Today. Yeah.
Like, well,
yeah,
that's all right.
And then missional community life, church life, our kids are involved in church gatherings, and they have friends of all ages because of just the nature of our shared life with others and this kind of stuff. They're here with us in Australia right now, and so one of our favorite things to do is to get our kids to see glimpses of the global church. That's unique, and we know that, but it is a huge beneficial thing, especially in Texas, very religious culture, to see just the amazing ways that God leads his people, and that his people across the world engage each other and engage the Lord. So those are some of the kind of scattershot practices that we've tried to pursue, imperfectly, but that's some of the ways we do it.
And I think for one thing that came to mind again, I know I said this a lot with the last one, but just intentionality. And it doesn't come on its own. So even when we started back to the school year last year and we started reading again at night, but had to get, things were a bit more of a time frame to get kids to bed before school.
Real quick, we have long summer break, and so summer break, things kind of just go awry. Kids go to bed later, this kind of stuff. So
yeah, it's a little bit like we don't have
a lot of freedom.
Rhythms are very different in the summer anyways, but so we're getting back into a rhythm for school. Honestly, as silly as it was, I set a timer on my phone for 8 p.m. and that's when we started to acknowledge, like, hey, if we're going to get the kids to bed and we're also going to do time reading together, then like this is our signal to like start moving that way. Just at least until we got into a rhythm of it. Because that was the thing, is it felt like at times that can be some of the first stuff to go. And you can just be like, well, I'm tired. You're tired. I'm just going to get you to bed or whatever. And so at least for us, it wasn't a legalistic thing so much as it was just like a, hey, remember the time is like
priority. Yeah,
let's make this a priority. The time is slipping, the evening's slipping away. And honestly, again, that's the same with Sabbath. Like when we do Sabbath well is when we plan to do Sabbath well. If we're gonna have that as part of our calendar, which we do, it means carving that out. It means being intentional and looking ahead with that as well. I had a friend tell me that she read something that was said something to the effect of, if you are truly Sabbathing one day a week, the rest of your week should look different. Mm-hmm. Because there are pieces to which you're preparing to take that whole time off. So,
and some Jewish friends talk about if in order for Sabbath to be restful, the day of preparation, which is also a biblical concept, looks pretty busy. There's a lot to do to prep for rest. And so again, that intentionality, whether it's 24 hours of Sabbath or not, to create space of rest and play.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Your week looks different because you have to push that day of stuff, especially because for a lot of people, you're working, 4 or 5 days a week. And so a lot of times then you're like, well, I've got 2 days to get stuff done as far as groceries or laundry or house projects or whatever. And so if you're removing that day to really carve out true rest, you're taking one of those big days and then taking that stuff and putting it throughout the week so that you can have that. And so I won't say that we always get, straight A's and Sabbath by any means. It's definitely something we're learning and growing in, and it's something that has looked different through the years with kids. It was harder, honestly, when they were littler, but it was still so important to us, and honestly, and probably more needed for us in that time when they were little. Not that it's ever not needed, but that was like a big thing that we started to fold in. And now it's interesting because the kids are a part of it, and so in a household of 5, rest looks different and true refreshment looks different. So it is not like we Sabbath from Friday evening into Saturday evening. And so that 24-ish hours isn't like my dream day though either, because we have 5 people that are speaking into what rest looks like, because we want to do this as a family. So it's not us all doing it in these separate silos. It's how do we Sabbath as a family. And so in this past season, that's looked like I work all day Friday, and so when I come home, a lot of times we do like a quick reset, quick cleanup, get the school bags up, stuff put away, and have very simple dinner. Snack dinner a lot of times.
Frozen pizza.
Yep, very basic.
Wine.
Yep, we kick it off.
For the grown-ups.
Yes. And a lot of times it's PJ movie night. Like, everyone's in their pajamas by 6:37. We have dinner, watch a movie. It's a dessert night for sure, because that is like some of my kids' favorite part is the fact that there's...
Mine too.
Okay. So, and just a really sweet time just to kind of unwind. I know a lot of people have different views on screens during Sabbath, but for us, it allows us just to typically share some story of a movie together and just to start resting and relaxing and coming off of a busy week. And then a lot of times it's slow Saturday mornings, reading, or I'll make a big brunch later. I enjoy cooking in the right scenario, so like for me that's not work. And so we'll go on walks sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of outdoor time.
Yeah. During our kids' seasons when they have sports, which they do, they enjoy that, and that's life-giving to them. And for me, it's life-giving to watch my kids enjoy what they are doing. So that is not a struggle that we have. However, I typically don't work out during Sabbath. But we'll go to, watch their game if they have like a football or cross-country meet or something.
Your kids have birthday parties, and again, that's life-giving to them. And
yeah.
It's friendship and this kind of stuff. So it's not this calm, peaceful, lakeside monk kind of a
secluded
day.
From the rest of our friends and family. I mean, honestly, some of my favorite Sabbaths are like when we go over to some of our friends' house that have a pool and we just hang out and rest by the pool, and kids are all playing and splashing and ordering dinner and just hang out there. And so it's not that it has to be separate, but also you should know yourself, and that works for us, but that may be someone's worst version of rest.
Well, once every couple months we'll just kind of do a family lockdown.
Yeah.
So, because it's good for us just to be together. So some Sabbaths are more intentional about that as much as possible.
We'll play a lot of games,
board games,
a lot of walks or bike rides. But yeah, it's not that it has to be look a certain way, but we do. It's a lot of removal of chores and removal of things that feel workish.
And distractions.
And so what is life-giving? What is refreshing? What is allowing us to kind of slow down and be more aware of God's presence with us, and just grateful for the gifts that He gives us through being able to move our bodies or play fun games or watch good movies watch good stories through movies and have yummy
very few
meals.
personal screens, very few phones, unless we're playing video games together kind of stuff. But some of this, there's different views on Sabbath. Jesus tells us that Sabbath is a gift from God. He frees us from the 24-hour rest mandate, but He still gives us the gift of rest, and says that man's not made for Sabbath. We're not confined to this thing, but Sabbath is still made for mankind, and so He invites us into glimpses of rest as a foretaste of the eternal rest that we'll have with Him. So Sabbath is hopefully very God-focused and community-focused, whether it's in our family or otherwise, because that's a little glimpse of eternity, that the eternal rest that we'll get. So that's why we find it beneficial to prioritize Sabbath.
Yeah. And I would say the other thing, sorry, I'm like, meh.
Thought we were wrapped up, but Jess has more.
But I would just encourage, I feel like I shared a lot about what Sabbath looks like for us now,
That's
but
us.
It didn't always, A, that's us, and B, it didn't always look like that because our kids were, when they were younger, it looked a lot different. It's not like they all of a sudden, Sabbath is a day where there's no temper tantrums and everyone's in a good mood. That still doesn't even happen. Yeah. There's still sometimes bad attitudes and...
Adults and kids.
Yeah, I'm not even blaming it on the children. But I think that for us, it really was just trying to, even when they were young, trying to talk about it and be intentional about it, and then realize, if that Sabbath didn't go well, how can we talk about it and get more on the same page for next time? Yeah. For the following week, or what can we do differently? Because the reality is we're still in a broken world, and so it's never going to be perfect, true rest anyways. And so I think the big thing is just learning and growing and acknowledging the stage and season that you're in.
Yeah, that's good.
But prioritizing these things, realizing they will not be perfect. It is hard to Sabbath with littles. Yeah. I get that. We've done that. It's hard. Yeah. Sometimes when we have we foster, and so sometimes when we have babies, I'm like, you're up still throughout the night or up really early, and for me, sleeping in is really restful. And so, but just remembering that this is the season, and this is not a forever season. And so, how can we make the best of this season, and how can we start modeling these things for each other, and how can we work together to care well for one another and for our kids in that.
So tangibly, I'll take, when kids were younger, I'll take him for a couple hours while Jess has a little bit more solo time. She'll take him for a couple hours later in the day. There's just unending creativity around this, and since we're not confined to it has to look one way. You're locked into this one day kind of thing. We have friends who, she kind of has a Sabbath one day. We have a lot of kids, so she kind of has a Sabbath one day, he kind of has a Sabbath another day, and they just kind of play it out. So again,
and that works for them.
It works for them. We joke often when we do marriage prep with folks that Jesus and communication will save your marriage, and it's only half a joke. We truly believe that. And so communicating about Sabbath, communicating about what needs exist and that kind of stuff is a huge win.